Well, looks like courtside TCU will be challenging the TCU Frogs will be challenging, yep, I forgot.
In program history, a 76-68 win over then third-ranked Notre Dame on Black Friday in the Cayman Islands. It was a game in which TCU outscored Notre Dame 31-12 in the fourth quarter to come away with the win. Frogs shot 61% from the floor in that fourth quarter, including 40.
Maybe Florida, TCU and Florida. I don't know for sure.
Notre Dame in check. Florida Atlantic coming in at 5-3. A team that went 11-19 a year ago and went 6-12 in American Athletic Conference.
Sounds like he said Florida Atlantic.
14 teams. The Florida Atlantic team picked to finish 13th in the AAC in the preseason coaches poll. Let's get to the starting lineups now. First for the visiting Owls under head coach Jennifer Sullivan.
All right, something to do with the Owls and the Horned Frogs.
Starts in the backcourt with Maya Perry, a 5'11 junior from Reynoldsburg, Ohio, their leading scorer, averaging 12.9 points per game. She's started every game this year for them. Stephanie Ingram has also started every game alongside in the backcourt, 5'8 redshirt sophomore this season, averaging 6.8 points per game. Up front, Jada Moore, 5'11 senior from Denver, Colorado. She's their leading returning rebounder and averages 10.5 points a game this year. She's starting her 8th game of their 9 this season. Maria Michaelbust, a 6'1 senior from Asker, Norway, who transferred in from Vermont, averaging 5 points and 3.6 rebounds a game. And Alana Rouser, 6-foot freshman from Madison,
Mississippi. All right, finally got it organized. I haven't looked any of this up. Different seasons, Hope Springs Eternal is Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption. Summer of Innocence is Apt Pupil, which is number 2. You're going to fall into corruption in the body. That's what Stand By Me was with River Phoenix and Corey Feldman and Will Wheatley and the fat kid from Sliders. After that, it's going to be The Breathing Method, which is The Winter's Tale. Well, it's The Winter's Tale is Breathing Method.
Especially when one has never dated before and the other has been in just one 5-year relationship.
Duh, of course you have.
That's what Heartbeats and Hesitations is all about. Get the best,
or rather mediocre,
dating advice from 2 people.
You can also connect with us on social media. Our Instagram and TikTok are both heartbeats_and_hesitations.
And remember, KTC listeners, secrets aren't safe with us, especially the juicy ones about your love life.
In his second,
it's definitely the Owls and the Horned Frogs. Look it up.
That they've switched to that takes into account a much wider range of outcomes. It goes into strength of schedule of opponents, margin of victory, efficiency ratings, all that kind of stuff baked into it. So it is supposed to be a little bit more of a fair.
All right, so I like the fact that he uses like a German Shepherd, right? So he's got the German Shepherd in there, and that German Shepherd gets killed, right? So then later, okay, all right, later, there's another German Shepherd. I'll get back to that. All right, yeah. So I like the idea that he's using a German Shepherd, right? So the German Shepherd, like that's, the first one, which is the dwarf, right? Probably Peter Dinklage, probably. All right. Yeah, right. Okay. So I like the fact that his name is Doc and Shelby, which is like a username between, the dog dies and then Shelby. Shelby, who is the, Robin Wright, he's trying to use Robin Wright. And they had to live, because he was like basically like a teacher, right? All right, so then he he gets wine and some kind of drug or something. He's on the street, he's with the dog, and basically, we insinuate the cops show up, right? That's what's happening. And then there's maybe a gun battle, whatever, and then Shelby gets hospitalized. The dog dies, and he goes for revenge. Very John Wick, right? Okay. All right. So then we see the German Shepherd again with Shep, right? Because Shep's like the cop, right? So the ex-cop, he's like on the run, right? Now that ends up in Alaska, right? And then you have that German Shepherd, right? Then each platoon member, right, that Doc is creating, because the dog's going around, they all have German Shepherds. So you got a lot of German Shepherds in the show. I like that. It's continuity, all right? Yeah. There's also a sense of Brian De Palma, but then there's also some Coen Brothers stuff in there too, I think it might be something. That's a big cast list, you get like $80 million just to talk to anybody, He's talking about Tom Cruise, Josh Brolin, all kinds of people that are big, iconic people, I'm mean, ideally, I had that going in my mind with like a Reservoir Dogs, but I just needed Keitel and Steve Buscemi, basically. What flavor do you like?
It doesn't matter. What flavor you like?
All right. Just any flavor. You're okay with just cheese?
Yeah, cheese, pepperoni.
I'll see what I can do.
Thank you, sir.
All right, so Shep gets in kind of a tussle as after he meets Shelby, which is Doc Shelby. And he gets in a tussle with the Wahlberg Alaskan Trooper and the Alaskan Trooper 2. Now, he goes running, and the dog goes running with him. Buster goes with him, and they make it away on foot. Only as they're headed back, because he still has some of his technology with him to make it back to his cabin, the rolling cabin. As he makes it back, he dodges them. He finds a way to dodge them by foot, because they won't go in certain areas and stuff, because it could kill, according to this, the blizzard. The dog and him have to go through this blizzard together. It's real, the Karosari, and they get through the blizzard. Well, lo and behold, he looks behind him. There's that polar bear. It's like a pet polar bear, or it's like a wild. It's a polar bear that's out of region. It's real weird. Like the storm blew the polar bear in, and he finally almost makes it back to the cabin. And he's got that's whenever the polar bear comes up behind him, and he grabs that pocket knife on the side of where the propane tank was, that he was using it to adjust the propane tank. That's when Buster the dog gets clawed and almost dies. And then he's able, because of Buster the dog, he's able to get the pocket knife open and begin stabbing the polar bear in the side of the neck repeatedly over and over again as fast as he can. Well, polar bear dies on top of him. He's able to take Buster the dog inside of the cabin. And that's whenever he calls Shelby, as in, the Lady Shelby is what I'll call her, Lady Shelby. And then he has to get a ride to the vet, and then he gets patched up at the vet. By then they know who he is, mostly because of the dwarf. The dwarf is the one that gets him in trouble. The dwarf is like technological genius. He's like a major hacker. The dog, we'll find out what happens to the dog. Shep does survive to see another day. So just to let you know, the tussle. Okay, so when I say Shelby, a lot of times I mean Lady Shelby. If I say Doc Shelby, a lot of times I'm talking about the dwarf. The dwarf does meet Shep because he wants to hire him as part of his platoon setups and stuff. It's part of like a sergeant or something, because he has training. All right. When the Alaskan State Troopers are notified by the dwarf, because there ends up becoming a love affair between Shep and Lady Shelby, which is Robin Wright. That makes the dwarf mad. He sets up the rendezvous with the Alaskan State Troopers. They pull off a kind of like think of Jack Nicholson in Crossing Guard. No, not Crossing Guard, sorry. Think of Jack Nicholson and The Pledge. That kind of scene kind of happens in a way. In a way, it's like they corner him, and but they actually see him. Because he's going back probably to the cabin, but he's not close enough. I gotta get him out there for some reason. Probably it has to do with this interceptor or something. Meaning, what's his name? Doc Shelby probably puts a tracker on the interceptor. So once he knows he has to get on foot, he starts he starts running. He goes to a mountain, and this is the middle of blizzard. And they try to get after him, but the blizzard gets in the way, so he gets over this, it's not a big mountain, but it's a pretty big mountain. He has to go over the mountain with the dog to go back around to try to make it back to the cabin, the rolling cabin. That's when the polar bear comes up. And the polar bear is probably from maybe a nearby zoo or an exhibit or something that had gotten loose. And that could be reported later in like a little post or something, like a little, somewhere they're looking for like a missing polar bear or something. If you see a polar bear, call this number. That polar bear follows him to his rolling cabin, and that's where the fight breaks out between him and the polar bear and the dog. Unfortunately, the dog, because the dog puts his life in front of his partner, the dog does end up passing at the vet. They weren't able to save it at the end. But they were able to patch up Shep and move on. That could be a good ending. 5.1, 12 minutes. Probably around 9 something. Alright, they're going to do The Color Purple, and then also doing The Twist the Night Before Christmas in November. It's Casa Mañana. The thing is about the story is the name Doc Shelby. Doc Shelby's not the real name of the Peter Dinklage dwarf character. We don't ever know his name. He's like a trillionaire. He's been through a whole lot. Was once kind of a drug addict. And also Jed Wilson was too. So he hangs out a lot with some skimpy people that were probably displaced and that, you know, come off the streets and halfway houses and things like that. You know, maybe some of them were insane asylums and things like that. So the dwarf is Doc Shelby, but Shelby, which is Lady Shelby, it was his partner, who later appears in Alaska, and she has black hair. So there's a little bit of Hitchcock vertigo, because she shows up again with black hair, jet black hair, and it's longer. That's the Robin Wright character. She's known as Lady Shelby, or just Shelby. The dog Doc, or also Doc the dog, or Doc the dog, is a German Shepherd that Doc Shelby lost. He named himself after that dog and his girl, Doc Shelby. All right, just want to make that clear. It's kind of weird whenever I say Shelby or Doc or whatever. But Shep is Shepherd Dwight East. He's the administrative leave cop, or the cop that's been let go and is on the run because of some kind of mistake that we might see in the sequel or something. We don't even really know in the first one. What it is it's kind of a MacGuffin. It's also what's inside the briefcase, you know, in Pulp Fiction. That's kind of what it is with What Did He Do Wrong? We don't know. Not in this first one. But we do know we get Doc Shelby's past. We do get Jed Wilson. Jed Wilson was probably like a drug addict and has lived in halfway houses and stuff, and was discovered by the dwarf, and he was taught to snipe. And I listed a long list of actors that usually have eccentric. Another one too could probably be Jeremy Davies too. I really like Jeremy Davies. I think he's good. I also thought of course, Brad Pitt, and I thought of Josh Brolin. There's a lot of different, and I even thought of Corey Feldman just today. I was like, hey, what about Corey Feldman? He hadn't done anything in a long time. He's a very eccentric character, Jed Wilson, and he's kind of a little comic relief. But he gets stuck out in his van, which is most likely probably like a GMC van, very Chrome Valdez kind of thing. And he's stuck out, kind of living in his van, waiting to take orders from the dwarf. The dwarf probably even met him. Maybe somewhere up like in Washington West, you know, like maybe even Seattle or something. Like a Seattle bum that he got off, you know, the road or the street that was camping, and he's like, hey man, you know, and started talking to him and stuff and teaching him stuff about warfare. Now, ideally, like, when Dog Night Out really happens, is it 20,000 that are killed? Probably not. You know, I kind of wanted to make that kind of realistic. You know, it's a revolutionary moment. I haven't seen Civil War yet. I know Kirsten Dunst is in it, Jesse Plemons and stuff like that. I haven't seen that yet. And I don't know why they're fighting and stuff like that, but like when it goes down, it happens, and it's kind of like it's kind of like when it goes down, it does happen, and it's kind of like National Guard stuff, you know, is released and things like that. So it gets a little Red Dawn. It gets a little there's a moment where that happens, whether it affects Shep and all that stuff. They're not going to see it, but on television or on the internet. But the other characters that are mentioned in the first might see it, or might be a part of it, or might even be victims of it, you know, because all of a sudden it gets all kind of purged, you know, and because it gets lawless, you know. It also has a little bit of white god in there. I haven't seen White God. I've only seen clips from it, so I have no idea what White God is about. I know it's about dogs, and I want to see it. I heard it was, you know, like a really important one. I have no idea what it's about. But I know that the German Shepherds are involved, and that part is kind of almost, you could almost say subplot. But it's something in the background that's kind of a little bit like the virus in The Stand. You know, how that's a big deal, but it's kind of a MacGuffin. You know, it's not why you're reading it. You're not reading for the monster. You're reading for different reasons. What does Stephen King say? He says, like, literature is about extraordinary people in normal circumstances. He writes about ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances. Probably Jed Wilson has something like that. I don't know if that's GMC, but it does have one headlight. I haven't mentioned that. It has Smile on the back. Look at that. It's got a little air conditioning. For air conditioning. Let's see if we can get that one headlight. Yeah, I haven't thought about maybe eventually he ends up having like one headlight. Kind of rumbles a little bit. It's got like a little buddy diesel heater. Maybe a mattress. I didn't mention a mattress yet. You know, ideally I probably thought it was like a brand new van, but it still could be like a brand new purchase of a van, of another Dweller van. So you can buy a Dweller van off of, you know, somebody. Or maybe it's something that the dwarf sent to him so that, you know, he'd be warm in Alaska. And the dwarf sent him there, you know, for training, you know, just like that'll be his training. Just put him in that environment. But Jed, you know, it's like, I don't have a lot of dialogue on Jed, although there is one song that he does listen to. He listens to Blacken by Metallica. Probably used to, definitely was like a pothead, probably. He was like a pothead for a while, and then got involved with gateway, pothead, you know, weed is a gateway thing, so he got involved with some other stuff. And then, you know, got into the wrong kind of thing. I do like the idea of having Jed a Metallica fan, but what about an Elliott Smith fan? That would be weird if a sniper also be an Elliott Smith fan. But, you know, like I said, you know, he hasn't got into combat. So this is like, he's called Jed Wilson the Sniper Snowman, or the Snowman Sniper, because they actually set up snowmen in the field, you know, real snowmen, you know, like out of snow, with a carrot nose and all that stuff. And they shoot at them as practice. That's why he's called Jed Wilson the Snowman Sniper. Anyway, it might be cool if maybe he like gets involved with maybe liking the Elliott Smith kind of thing. Lost, everything reminds me. .9, 7 minutes, 9:38.
7:20 p.m. early September. Standing like an ad photograph you don't remember. You look out of breath with me like I forget.
This would be a really good song for Dog Night Out when they're arriving in Alaska.
Spring, spring, flowers blossoming.
All right, so the polar bear is killed by Shep. Later on, there will be a man that appears. He's a native. He's got long hair. Thought Benicio. Thought about a local resident playwright named goes by Bobby Skez. He appears as a spirit of the polar bear, but it just says Alaska native in the polar bear ceremonial garb. And there's going to be something that goes on like with in an igloo, and he's going to talk to him about the polar bear. It'd be kind of a weird Oliver Stone / Natural Born Killers kind of moment, but that'll happen too in Alaska.